Oh, great. Welcome, everybody. Today is July 18th. You're with B2B Rocks. This is your host, Stephen Lurie. Maybe I'll switch over my slide here so you can see me. Hope you're all having a great day. I know I'm having a great day. Welcome, everybody. Today is July 18th. You're with... Hold on, let me turn off my background echo. Once again, I had that going. Today, I have Doreen Pernel here. I hope I pronounced that correctly. And we're going to talk a little bit about best sales practices. She's a really interesting young woman. She's been a really high performer at a lot of top sales organizations. So hopefully we'll get some good tips and learn about that. Before we start, I just wanted to share two things that I just stumbled upon related to news that I thought were kind of interesting. First one was about early stage SaaS startups set for funding rebound. I thought this was kind of interesting article. So apparently they had polled a lot of venture capitalists and they just said, yep, everything's going back up. We're going to be doing more deals. The valuations are going to be lower, but things are coming back up. And I think this is really interesting because I always like the analogy of a forest. Sometimes there's fires in forest. It's destructive, but it's necessary for a lot of trees, a lot of plants, and a lot of animal species to have these fires so that they can do better the next season. And there was an article that I paired with that as well, which I thought was really interesting, which was about job losses in Europe. And the analogy extends to the job losses as well. So, a lot of companies laid off people, but the layoffs weren't as deep in Europe as they were elsewhere in the world because of a lot of labor laws that we have in Europe. But a lot of these people have now gone on to other companies, and so they're providing talent to new companies or they're starting up new companies. So I think this is a really interesting idea. And this is kind of what I expected would happen with the tech ecosystem, with the SaaS ecosystem going forward. Everything's cyclical. We have spring, summer, fall, winter. That's how it happens. And it's not always a straight line going up. But what's really interesting about this sector is each time there's a down trend, is that the sector matures. The founders, the VCs, everyone becomes more mature about their outlook and realize, there's no easy way to do this. It's challenging. But remembering back to what technology was before 2001, before the big plunge there in 2002, the ideas just weren't. People thought less about revenue models. People thought less about exit strategies, and now we're seeing a continuation of this where people are having even much more maturity. But boom, we could talk about that for hours. That's not today's conversation. Today we're here to talk about sales. I started out as a salesperson, so let me see if I'm able to bring my person on here. Oh, good. I've got you, Doreen. How are you today?
I'm good. Thanks. How about you, Steve?
Pretty well. Always really well. For the most part, anyhow. So we were talking just a few minutes before the show. You said that this was an exciting time for you.
It is exciting time, beginning of Q3, so QBR, so quarterly business review, which is always an important time during a quarter where you want to be able to pause, strategize, make sure all your stakeholders are aligned together. So we're all going towards the same goal. And it brings, a positive energy into a sales culture, I feel.
Yeah, everyone can take a little breath and think about what they're doing, which they might not have the time to do that all the time. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself, your role?
Yeah. So I'm currently VP sales at Scaleway. So I joined Scaleway a couple of months ago. Prior to that, I was as well in sales leadership at different B2B SaaS companies. So I work in data science at Dataiku. I work at Facebook as well when it was named Facebook before it became Meta. I work at Box, at Bloomberg. So you can see different industry within the tech world where I could learn different products, very very quickly and making sure that we bring our sales team to the best they can be.
Good. And why did you choose Scaleway? Why did you come aboard there?
Yeah, it's a good question. First, it's a French company. And I think as a French person, it's always one of the best thing you can do, and I really believe in the product. If you don't know about Scaleway, so Scaleway is European cloud market. Really, we have a value proposition that will be centered around sovereignty, sustainability, and as well innovation. So if you imagine your cloud, Scaleway will allow you to deploy, to build, to scale really in infrastructure, to have a complete cloud ecosystem around you. We have multiple products, services, and I think when you are ahead of the curve, that you play a challenger role, against a lot of American giants. You bring this extra value, this extra culture. When you are at Scaleway in the office, the vibe is very special, and the leadership in place is amazing. So really, that really attracts me, and the challenge to be in front of the big Americans. That's something that now I enjoy. I used to be working for those big American corporations like Facebook or Bloomberg, and now I enjoy to be a bit challenged on that part.
Great. And I just want to call out, Scaleway does a lot of work with startups as well.
Yeah. Scaleway, historically, was partnering a lot with startups. So we still continue. We have currently a pool of thousands of clients that are from any type of startup stage. So seed stage, early stage, growth stage. We have as well startups that are ready to be scaled up. And so we help them to grow, but we help them to grow with a complete sustainability in mind. When you are in the cloud, you have to be responsible about your data as well. So we want to bring all the innovation, help them to scale wisely within the cloud ecosystem. Because when you're a startup or a scale-up, it goes very quickly and your data can get misorganized as well, and the infrastructure too. So we want to make sure that we bring the resources for them. We help them to be autonomous and to build on top of their infrastructure. So now the market as well for us is growing. So we are as well going after, and we have some enterprise clients. So to have a mix of both, I think it's very healthy.
Yeah. Karl Marx said a long time ago, he said that capital was power. And I think more and more data is power. And so no, it's important to be able to control your data. Well, so what are some of the things that you've seen? These organizations you mentioned, they're all known to have really aggressive, really successful sales organizations. So what are some commonalities you saw? I'm sure each one is different, but there's got to be some commonalities there.
Yes, I think it comes around the people first. A sales culture, a sales war machine, like I like to call it, comes with the people. You have to make sure that the sales people within your team are true salesperson. And it's nothing to be shameful about, sales is not for everyone. A sales mindset, it's as well a founder mindset, is someone that would be very driven, would not take no for an answer, would be very resilient, will be able, to go into the trenches and take his phone or her phone for cold calling. It's a type of personality. And within that ecosystem, you need a lot of different roles to be successful. And that's really, like we say, the foundation. You have true salesperson, very driven into their role, and they are surrounded by a support ecosystem. And it's a large one. It goes from marketing, the technical side, the support side, the sales operation, the sales enablement. It's really like making sure that everyone is aligned towards the same strategy. And then you put the layer on top of it, especially when you scale, having the processes, making sure you have the right tuning, making sure people are really enabled, and it goes in layers. And the best, I would say, war machine that I've seen is as well with a strong leadership, really having someone or many leaders that will drive the sales culture, that will make it fun, And I'm completely aware that a lot of jobs are stressful, but the sales jobs is really stressful because you're always on targets. You start a quarter, you start at zero sometimes. It can be very stressful on the nerves. And when you have this person, this leader that you can follow, you can trust, you can rely on, I think that's very powerful. And it's playing with the emotions as well. As a sales leader myself, like I had a lot of my team members or managers coming to me with emotional response to what was going on in the market or deal, and I think it's normal. We're human, and that's the biggest component in a successful team, I think.
Really interesting. Yeah, driven, motivated. I've seen so many different profiles in sales, but one profile seems to come a lot is people that kind of have an athletic background. Have you found that to be true too?
It's very true. A lot of people that lack sports or any type of, I would say,
Yeah.
activity that brings you to always improve, be in front of competition, could be as well art, could be singing, like any type of things that you are improving, you're in front of others, like you are as well your own competition, and especially sports. And I remember when I was hiring more junior roles, sometimes I would put zero qualification and experience in B2B SaaS or YaaS or PaaS selling, but I will just ask questions about their background, if they were in front of this kind of pressure, if they had those kind of situations where they had to go above and beyond to succeed, or even people that have been traveling around the world and being by themselves and being in situations where you have to deal with what's going on in front of you. You have to be independent. And I do a lot of analogy at work with sports as well. I love F1, for example, but I know not everyone loves F1. So I try to find sports that we are all aligned with. And I think those metaphors really resonates with a lot of salespeople.
Yeah. I think important thing to dive into is you mentioned mentoring and leadership. So what is the difference between those and how do you see those in your own sales organizations? How have you seen that work in other organizations as well?
Yeah, I would say there is even more. There is the mentoring part, the leadership part, and you have the coaching part that are really important. When you are a leader, you're leading, you are really the voice to follow, you're the person putting the strategy in front of people, person as well making the top call, putting this in front as well of the team, making sure that we are aligned, we have the foundation, we can all deliver, get your shit done. That's really important. And the part of mentoring, it's really the human to human connection with your managers or your individual contributors in front of you to understand what motivates them to be in sales. It's often a question that I used to ask when I was a direct line manager is, why are you in sales? Why do you want to make that much money? Why do you want to close that other deal? Is it because you want to buy something? Is it because you want to invest? Is it because you want to retire at 45? What do you want to continue to close even though you're already above quota? And that's part of mentoring, is to bring people to their best selves, understanding their drivers and their triggers. And the last part of coaching is really to make sure, like a coach in sports, you get them to the limits. You get them as well in front of what they need. And you kind of help them as well in all those situations to see the positive in what they could first, when you're short and you're like really short in time, you see the negative sometimes. You're here to motivate them, you're here to cheer them, and to be as well this kind of mentor, leader, and coach. And it depends on the situation. And I hope my team will see that as a leader, you have to wear different hats. You can't be the fun leader all the time. Sometimes you have to be the tough leader that gives direction. It's the same with a coach. You have the strong coach. You have the coach that will be more easy peasy, and that this kind of thing that will make a great mentor, leader, and coach.
I don't want to divert. Okay. One of the things we talked about you brought up in a previous conversation was the importance of women and diversity in sales. And I'm guessing you've seen that in other sales organizations, these well-performing sales. So why is this important?
I think diversity, any shape or form, with or without like race, the gender, like the diversity of background, the internationalization, it's really important. And I'm a strong advocate for women. It's getting better. We see more and more women in sales. But when I started, often we were maybe 2, 3 tops. And it takes longer to recruit women. I think what's important into diversity is when you have a pool of candidates. If you're interviewing and you don't see that your pool of candidates is diversified enough, to make sure that you yourself, you outbound into the candidates that you would like to speak with. The role of hiring is not only in the hands of the talent acquisition team, it's as well your job to make sure that if the pool in front of you is not diverse enough, that you put more people in. And it comes for any type of diversity. And it comes to women, I've seen it many, many times over, is when you are very diversified, you get the best of each other. And you have this kind of harmony, I would say, in the team where it's not biased. People will make sure to bring their the most favorable quality in the sales cycle. And I think the best salesperson is as well the person that's the most organized. There is these stereotypes that women are more organized. Yes or no, I'm not here to debate. But for sure, I see a lot of women being organized, like having their sales force very tidy up, having everything organized into their different software. So it's funny, like for us, we use Asana and we all have Asana spaces. And each time when I see the difference in who does what, you can see who is more organized into their plan. But that's why it's important. And if you don't have a team that's diversified, you will see the cost at the end of the journey for sure.
When you say diversity, what about backgrounds, educational backgrounds? Do you look for diversity in educational backgrounds as well?
Yes, big times. Of course, degrees are important to learn, but I think as well that it's not mandatory. I have in my team and in my previous teams people that don't have master's degree or even bachelor degree, but those people have another kind of experience and learning curve. They maybe didn't learn at school, but they did, 3 years around the world and learned all the cultures and can speak 4 languages. What else do you want? Like, it's really different, and each type of experience and knowledge will bring something into your team for sure. And you see often in the job description, especially in France, you have to have a master's. We removed that at Scaleway. Master's, like we put degree. And then we make a goal. It's really important that we remove those stereotypes. I even have in my family, in my sibling, someone that is not a graduate from high school, and he now runs a college in France. So really to understand that it's not because you don't have the degree that you can't do the job. There are other ways to learn and to be exceptional. And I think that, and my brother, the sibling I was telling you, is exceptional in that way. And I've seen it many times over and over that that's the case. And in the US, it's maybe more common that it is now in France. In France, it's starting to be democratized.
Yeah, I feel really fortunate to be an American in France because I studied English literature, and so typically you don't find yourself working in technology. But I think if you're curious and you're passionate about something, I think there's a lot people can do, and sometimes it's actually beneficial because you bring a different perspective, and it's kind of like you talked about that idea of diversity. How do you do on your team? Do you assign mentors or coaches, or how do you make sure that everybody, people need tools, they need their computer, and they need the sales process, and then they also need these other things. How do you make sure that they're getting that on for the human development side?
Yeah, it's a very good question. So for new hires, we often put them with a buddy. depending, of course, of which role they're joining at which stage, they will always be paired up with someone that is more experienced. And I think that's the case in many companies. At Scaleway, I'm new to Scaleway. We haven't put it yet, but if I take, for example, what we've done at Facebook, we had a mentoring program that was open by volunteers, and there were one that was a bit more mandatory. Because some people will seek for a mentor, some other people will not seek for a mentor, but when they understand what is mentorship, they will be attracted into the funnel and they will be happy with the kind of relationship we can offer. So it's to make sure to have a bit of both option and to not push on people who do not want, but most of the time, especially in sales, we are looking for advice. We are coachable people that want to have a mentor. And to add to that, there is as well the difference to having to mentor and sponsor. The sponsor is really someone, and you have to find and seek that person proactively, is that person that will always sponsor you internally. Like, for example, if you're not in a meeting and someone is speaking about a project, they will say, oh, yes, for this, Steve will be the best person. I know that Steve did that. Let's bring him to the conversation and we'll help you with opportunity and realization of your full potential. That's different. A mentor will be someone that will be more natural in your day-to-day, could be someone within your direct team, someone a bit external to your team, depending on the kind of mentorship you want. And you have as well the diversity, but like mentoring that you have. That's something I put in place at Data Echo. When I went on maternity leave, we saw at Data Echo that we needed to have stronger mentorship. And so we crossed globally all the women's with mentors that were women as well, to bring for everyone this kind of relationship between mentor and mentee. And we had rules for the mentees to follow and rules for the mentors to follow, because those things as well are between a framework of HR, because it's important relationship. So we want to make sure to get into this. And at Scaleway, I think I'm doing my first quarter. After a quarter or two, I'll make sure to replicate this kind of projects. And I think it's really important to open the door to mentorship and sponsorship in companies, and especially for anyone that is suffering to not being in front of the diversity.
Yeah, I think, and I just want to say to our audience and the people who see the replay, I really encourage you, especially if you're young in your career or it's a new position, go find mentors, go find coaches. In addition to leaders, if we're lucky enough to have a great leader, these are the things that can help us develop the quickest. And also avoid a lot of psychological stress in many cases, because they'll give you perspective and be like, you're doing fine. Concentrate on this. But the other point is make sure you're listening to your mentor. We touched on some stereotypes related to women and men being less organized, women being more organized. Okay, let's set those aside. But I'm just curious, I've worked with a lot of women in sales positions, and for me, it seems like because they're organized, because they're persistent, because they have in many cases, a better work ethic. Sorry, guys. It seems like they can be really successful. But sometimes it seems like the other thing I've seen is that because they've had like the sales roles, that they're maybe a little less confident in that role, and maybe a little less aggressive. Are these true, or do you think I'm going too far into the stereotypes?
I think there are not only stereotypes. I would say it's the majority.
Okay.
Majority of women that I had under my leadership will be super organized. Majority will be very successful because of the organization, the drive, the audacity as well. Sometimes they can bring in the sales cycle stuff that we would not think ahead of it. But as well, women are often the worst at negotiating their own salary. When they are hired, you give them a package and they say, yeah. And you're like, okay.
Yeah.
And normally you're used to having those conversations back and forth. Okay, let's talk. And even when you do end of your review, they're gonna speak as a we. That's something I always correct when I do first line management of reviews. Is here. So we did this and we closed that deal, which is true. Sometimes it's a we to close a deal because it takes a pledge, right? But at the end of the day, you close the deal. You brought the revenue, and it's always a we, which I appreciate. But at some point, you have to say I. And you have to put yourself on these kind of standards and put your value on the table and say, this is my strengths. This I can do. This I'm the best at. And you will hear not that often a woman say, I am the best at this. I am amazing to do that. Like they will not put themselves forward. When I've heard maybe more men being more forward, and they were true, like they were the best. And that's not being cocky or being rude. It's just being trustful of what's happening. And I think when we are, like doing any exercise in sales, they will wait sometimes to speak because they were maybe used in past experience that they couldn't speak. And I have someone in the team that even told me that in previous companies, they were cut and people were just like interrupting them when they were speaking. And it's just the way that they were in this format and they are used to it. So it's to, empower them to see their value, realize what they can do, and help them to pitch themselves. That's something I like. And I had not long ago a woman coming to me and say, I think I deserve this because of ABC. And I like your approach. I'm not saying you're going to have something, but I like the approach. Like it's something that I'm okay to hear. I'm not saying because someone is coming to me asking for something, they will get it, but it's important to go forward for it.
But it's sure if we never ask, we'll never get it.
No, exactly.
Yeah, so you get none of the deals you never asked for. So so people have to do that. This is just a kind of a side note. I remember reading a report on young people in educational system and the difference between male and female outlook. And the boys who did well, they asked them, well, why did you do well? And they said, because I'm smart. And they asked the girls, why did you do well? And the girls said, well, because I worked hard. And so it's a very different outlook. So but boys tend to internalize success and defeat, and women tend to attribute that to a lot of different factors. And it's just kind of how I think it's kind of how we're hardwired. And the other thought I had while I was listening to you is there's this organization, it's based in France, but it's a global organization called Women in Technology. And they're looking to get more and more women in technological and engineering roles. And they think that's important just for diversity ideas. And also they'll, help develop income and the other things like that. But I think also in sales and other roles. And it's not just a nice thing. It leads to this diversity, which actually you build stronger organizations, which is a really interesting concept. Okay, you brought it up, so I have to ask you, compensation. So what about compensation? I see a lot of organizations cap compensation. So what are your thoughts on compensation, and what do you see that great organizations do?
Yeah, so many different things can be done. Not reinventing the wheel when you cap, when you have accelerators, decelerators. I think it's great to have a format of success that will drive your team to continue to be closing. And it's not only to be closing, but as well creating opportunities. If you're a BDR, if you're an ISR, it's great to make sure that you don't stop because your quota is at 100%. So I always say the sky is the limit. But I like as well having conversation with top performers. So to kind of say, okay, at this threshold, I'm not saying you're not going to get paid, that there is a cap, but at this threshold, let's have a conversation. I would like to understand what's your motivation to keep closing. So let's say you're at 140% or 125% of quota, which is already very good achievement.
Great problem to have.
Great problem to have, but you want to hear them. You want to hear your top performers, because often as leaders, we spend time a lot with middle and low performers to get them, to be top performers, and to have this conversation with the top performers. All right, you are at 140%. You still have 3 days in pipe with close date for this quarter. What's the incentive for you to close? What do you want to see? And to make sure you have those conversations, to not close the door into closing more and having more conversation, but making sure that you're aligned and you see what's next for your top performers, so you don't lose them for another company with another compensation plan where they will make more money because they will get a bigger rise there. You want to make sure that you listen to them, because often you're going to hear, I want to close for more money, let's discuss, but as well, I've been closing for like 10 quarters now. I see myself being a coach. I want to continue. And hearing as well what your top performers are seeing in the market and how to replicate what they're doing. So I would say a mix of both, a mix of the sky is the limit, but let's understand why you have those people going to the limit and to the sky, and why you have people who don't. And I think it's very motivational for BDRs and for ISRs to be uncapped, because this is the toughest jobs in sales. Getting into cold calling, doing all the LinkedIn research, the mapping, all this groundwork that sometimes takes weeks to be achieved. Yep. Really for them, I'm always open to say, okay, the sky is the limit, bring us pipeline, always with a quality check. At some point, in the sales cycle, you have to create opportunities, but you as well count on the number of evaluation you're bringing or the number of free deals that you're bringing to make sure you have a bit of a balance here. So it depends on the roles you're doing in sales, but both are important to be evaluated.
Really interesting. What about gamification? Do you use gamification at all?
Yes. I think it's super important in sales. A bit of gamification, friendly competition. It's really healthy. Most of the time, the people that you have in your team will be natural competitors. They will enjoy just competing with themselves. So having, whether like for BDRs and ISRs, a call blitz, or being on the floor, cold calling, the people that get the most meeting will win, but as well competition, on acceleration of deals, competition on such and such products, a new product launch, competition as well, because we like to work with different stakeholders. We have a huge event upcoming in November, and we want to make it as well a game and a gamification. We want to gamify even marketing. We want to gamify the culture of the surrounding of sales, making sure that sales are not the only one to play, but we play as a revenue team and revenue ecosystem. I think that's the most healthy way that you can see it. And it's always fun. We have as well a gong ceremony where you gong when you have a deal close, and it's just fun. It's to release the pressure a little bit. We know we're talking to big people, big companies, so just to make a game out of it. I think we all still children in our heads.
Who doesn't like to have fun?
Exactly. And I think that's the easiest. And we should have fun even at work. Of course, we are being paid for something, to deliver something. We're here to get shit done. But what about having fun while doing it? I think that's super healthy.
Just a quick question on Scaleway. Are you guys hiring?
We are hiring. We are hiring heavily.
Okay.
Account executive, inside sales representative, customer success managers. So yeah, we are hiring in sales. We are scaling. Scaleway scaling.
That's good.
That's really good. I'm the one that inventing this one. So yeah, definitely. If you're looking for a role, you can come to me.
Okay, good. You heard it here first, or maybe not first, but you heard it here. So if anyone's looking for a sales role, I had a blast from a past this week. We signed SAP as one of the sponsors to B2B Rocks event on September 19th,
nice.
Station F. And that they were the first company that inspired me to want to go to enterprise software sales. And so when I graduated from college, I was like, I want to go do that. And it was originally the money that attracted me because those guys in California could make 400, 500,000 a year. But then I became passionate about other things related to that. But it was a heck of a motivator and got me to cut my hair and work out and read lots of books. So it was a good thing. And of course, they've been a very successful company over the years. Let's talk about sales terminology.
Mhm.
How do you make sure that your team's always on the same page and that you guys understand each other? Because I think a lot of people, my experience in different sales organizations, which is typically when it's smaller organizations, is that people don't understand sales terminology well.
Mm. It's a big topic, especially when you go companies to companies that you're becoming more senior. You've heard many terms, like for example, I use BDR, ISR. Like what does it mean? It means different things at different companies, and I think it's important to have a talk within your team in a kickoff. That's what I did when I joined back in June, to really just have everyone in the revenue team and be like, okay, this is the team, this is the terminology, this is how we're going to work, this is our sales cycle, and talking the same, I would say the same language when it comes to selling. So for example, I put in place MedPick. So to make sure that even within the qualification, the funnel, the evaluation, and the closing, we were really talking the same language within.
What was that term you used again? MedPick?
MedPick, yeah.
How do you spell that?
So the MedPick terminology is MEDDPICC. So it's a way to qualify around your sales cycle and to make sure that you go through all the important stage. So the metrics, the economic buyer, the decision criteria, decision process, all the paperwork, procurement process, identify the right pain, get your champion, understand your competition. And that's the full MedPick. And I think when you talk into an organization and you have the terminology right and you are into, your team meetings or your pod meetings, I think it's important that you all understand the stages, the qualification, and the terminology, because I've seen it all. Like maybe you don't use MedPick, someone is going to use another term, but it's important. And the more I am in sales, the more I read and I hear different terminology, and like you, sometimes I'm like, can you spell it? Okay.
Yeah.
And then I'll be Googling. I'm like, okay. And I'm going, you read, you learn, and it's infinite. Like the many different things you can read and learn about sales. It's great, but it's overwhelming sometimes. You're like, oh my God, I am like ahead of the curve, or am I behind? Like,
That's really interesting. European and the US have different HR cultures.
Yeah.
So in the US, companies tend to make decisions faster. So if they don't think someone's going to work out, they'll let them go. That's probably less true in technology because the cost of hiring is so much higher.
Yeah.
In Europe, things are a little bit more complicated, especially in France. So companies tend to see if they can kind of salvage somebody or coach them into success. Do you think that's true? That's my big statement there. But do you find that to be true because you've worked with US companies and also European companies?
Yes. So I had the chance to work for companies and being based in New York, in Sydney, in London for many years. And it's been 4 years that I'm in France now, even though I'm French and originally from France. Most of my career, I did it abroad. And so I work under English law, Australian law, American laws. And of course, in France, you see the difference. But I think even though you have different law that would be for employers and employees, everyone has to be smart in hiring. Like you say, the cost of hiring is so high. It comes, like I was saying at the beginning, having the right pool of candidates, making the right choice, hiring the right person from the get-go. will remove all the troubles that you were saying. But when you are in front of someone, like is in, is doing his first couple of months with you, if you know it won't work out, but you have to know by the data. That's something super important to me, is not a gut feeling. All right. You have to get the data within your CRM. You have to know that this person, and you forecast as well that this person won't make the cut. And you can give second chances. In many countries, it's the case when you can renew their period. And so whether it's 3 months, 6 months, you can renew and have this second chance. And I think that's important. If you have a doubt and you think that person needs just a little bit more coaching or a little bit more time, it's important, especially in tech, because it's complicated industry. Like we were saying before, you don't learn everything at school. Like I went to data science. I didn't learn data science at all at school. And when I got to Data IQ, it was going back to school. My learning curve was slower than compared to Bloomberg. I knew about the market. I know about the financial markets. I was already, comfortable because of my university background. But I think you should have a chance. But if the data is telling you, no, this person won't make the cut because of not making enough calls, not being able to move along the needle into the sales cycle, or is not learning like at the same pace. And I think it's good when you have a strong onboarding. And that's something that we are building with our sales enablement manager, to have quizzes. So we have already a few quizzes in place about the products, about the solution, about the sales cycle. And that shows if someone understands what's going on. And if the pass rate of those tests is 90% and you have someone failing again and again, then at some point, yes, you have to have that conversation. And it's healthy on both ways. When I have conversation with someone that I choose to let go that person because the first couple of months didn't work out, I always give keys of success. And if I believe in that person because I hired that person, I think it's as well my duty to help that person to turn around a little bit. And as leaders, we all have a network, and we know by experience what kind of tech could be the best for that person. So it's to be human at the end of the day, and understand this kind of concept.
The conversation in the United States always starts the same way. They always say, you're going to be successful at your next job. So it always starts like that. It's tough. It's tough, but companies and managers don't want to be upset about this. I mean, like we said, there's a lot of cost to hiring, to go fighting the wrong candidate, onboarding the person. No one wants that person to fail. No one likes telling somebody that they're not going to be successful or this isn't the right job for them. And in a way, if we're a manager, it's a little bit of a personal failure as well. So it's really a tough deal. So no one wants to do this, but sometimes, it's just part of the business. You speak English so well. And of course, you worked overseas for Bloomberg and a lot and Facebook. So what language do you guys work in? So
French, English, and Spanish for most of it. That's the three most important markets for us, is where we chose to focus. We'll see later on if we continue to open, that we hope that we're going to continue to scale. But I think it's important to hyper focus on markets, to have those success stories and grow slowly but surely. Okay.
So you work in different language markets, but then internally, what is the language of communication, or how do you communicate across different borders?
So internally at Scaleway, we have French and English. So English is our company language, but we still have a lot of French meetings, and because many people, whether are French or are people like you that are Americans living in France. For example, our CRO is from the Bay, but is fully fluent in French and married to an amazing French woman. So we have those kind of people, or even one of my managers, she's Mexican and she speaks fluently French, English, and Spanish. But most of us understand English and French fluently.
just like to point out that your CRO, can you remind me his name again?
It's Liam.
Liam. He's I think he's originally from California like me, and he's also a skateboarder like me. So he's quite a talented guy, and
Yes.
on top of that, and he used to run an amazing website talking about the tech industry, which is
Yes.
called the Rude Baguette. Really interesting talking to him. What do you think? I hope you're going to be on the same page as me here. What do you think is the most overlooked skill in sales?
Like, you mean the one that we don't pay attention for most people, but is the one that will make a difference?
Well, yeah.
I
I think it's the thing we actually talked about quite a bit, that a lot of junior people or people that are green, they don't do enough of.
Yeah, and like we said, what was the most important, like having the grit, making sure to be resilient, and I think those ones are common. What I've seen being very important is people that are coachable, but people that go beyond the coachability and can learn by themselves and continue to learn as are their DNA. That's could be a junior stage and those young people, and I think there is as well the fact that each generation is different. You have generations that will be more or less confident. Like now we have the generation of people that were at university during COVID, getting out with their degrees or just starting to work. And I think each generation have to be cared in a certain way. I was interviewing someone at Scaleway that did his last couple of years during COVID, couldn't travel. So because this person couldn't travel, he had to learn English in France. And that's not an advantage, but he learned it anyway. And he told me, I watch TV shows, I read books, I did this, I did that. I'm like, wow, I'm fortunate to be fluent in English because I lived abroad for 10 years. At 18 years old, couldn't speak English. I went abroad. I say, Mom, Dad, I need to be fluent. And they sent me to Oxford and Southampton, where I had to learn by myself. That was a good way to start my career. But I think when you have these kind of people in front of you that despite being in a tough environment, despite all the no's and negativity in front of them, they make something good. I think that's the trait that is often putting aside, but that's really important in sales. Like those people that will be always positive with you and find the good in the bad. I think that's really important.
Yeah, that concept of persistence and resilience.
Yeah.
Again, qualities I often associate with women additionally, but that's really interesting. So do you see a difference generationally between employees? Do you I'm Gen X, so okay.
Yeah, I would say there is a difference, especially what they have been going through the past years. Gen X or Gen Z won't be behaving the same in a company. We see some people that are often not in front of reality sometimes because they've seen exceptions that they think is the general rule. I had many times those conversations because like they saw something or someone, I'm like, this is exceptional. This is not happening every day. I wish it was. It's really to have this reality check sometimes, but I like as well in those generations, like the hope of everything is possible. I had someone coming to me and he was very new in sales and he showed me his Twitter account and he had, I don't know how many people following him. He was able to build around him a huge network alone, know, and I think that's really powerful to go above a bit of the stereotypes that we can see in that generation and see how they can really master all the social media and everything around them to surprise you, because I couldn't believe it, because he didn't show anything to me that he would be an influencer, and then share that. And I'm like, wow.
Yeah. I love, in my role in advisor, I got to work with the sales team a lot last year, and I love working with young people because they infuse you with energy and ideas, and it's infectious. And then you take their ideas and you're like, oh, I can do this other thing with that, and it's really important. And it goes back to what you were talking about, like lifelong learning. I guess the skills I was talking about that I think are overlooked and underappreciated were kind of three things. They're basic for me. They're very basic sales communication skills. So it was listening, rephrasing, and parroting. Just always to be doing that. And I don't know. Are people taught that now?
Yeah.
Or do you teach them?
I think some people naturally will do it. They will be good active listeners that will be just in their personality. And when it's not, it's something we can teach. One of the managers at Scaleway, Nadia, is huge on this. She goes back to the basics, like you were saying to their team. And did you listen? Did you rephrase? What did you hear in their silence as well? Making sure that you pause a little bit and you use this silence in your opportunity. And I think when you are able to take the time to listen actively, and now I know we have like all those AIs that can help you and take notes from you and so on. But I do believe on those core principles, and the best salespeople are the people that listen. The worst one are the ones that just keep talking and don't let their prospect talk at all.
Yeah. I think that was one of the biggest misconceptions I had when I started out was that, but that can pretty quickly be overcome. Well, what are some things we didn't talk about, or anything you'd like to add?
I think I can't believe I just look at the time. It's already 15 minutes in. Time flies. I think one of the last thing would be important, because we talked a lot about the people and the salespeople. And again, something that I started to talk at the beginning is the friends of sales, the people around sales that really help us to be successful. It will be, and I'm sorry if you can hear in the background, my son just came back from daycare.
No problem.
And I think it's really important that we put in the winning perception the friends of sales, everyone helping the sales team to be successful. So supporting the enablement teams, the solutions team, technical team, and it's always, I feel like the AEs and the salespeople that are put forward, but it's really important that we take in consideration the other teams that make sales what it is now. That's really something that we don't often talk, but without them and without everyone and all the stakeholders around sales wouldn't be what it is. So I think that's really important.
Yeah, I think the other thing that I've seen in organizations is when sales team doesn't have good processes and good people, then they rely on the AEs too much, and there's too much failure.
Yeah.
And then you tend to see kind of like dissatisfaction between the different units. So sales starts to mistrust marketing, and the technical team mistrusts sales and marketing. And so when everyone's working well together and they're creating success, it makes it so much easier, and it makes you want to give your best because you know it's going to go somewhere, as opposed to you're like, oh, where is this going to go? Nowhere again. And then everyone's frustrated. And morale is such an important part of building a successful organization.
Yeah, 100%, Steve. And I think when everyone is aligned and you know, like, everyone is successful, that's the best thing ever in the company, and that's where we want to do, and that's what we're doing during our QBRs as well, is to make sure that we are all successful. Like, it's not normal to see one team super successful and one other team not successful. I think there is an harmony into the success, and if one is successful, it should cascade down into success for everyone.
Right. Is Scaleway going to be? You guys are going to be at B2B Rocks, correct?
Yes, yes, we are going to be at B2B Rocks. You're going to have a few people from all revenue team coming, and even product team coming to B2B Rocks.
Right. Will you be there?
Unfortunately, I won't be there because it's during my vacation that I put before I traveled, before I changed jobs, when I was working at Data Iku, I put my PTOs for Data Iku's events.
Okay. Well, enjoy your vacation. Hopefully we'll get another chance to meet. I'd like to come down and see Liam as well. Thank you much for your time. Also, hold on. We have a webinar coming up with Scaleway as well.
Yeah. We have more events coming up, and that the one happening at Station F. So that's the good thing. B2B Rocks and Scaleway are working more together.
That's great. Well, thank you so much. It's great to have partners like you. Thank you for all the advice you had today. All of my notes. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, Steve. Take care. Thanks, everyone.
All right.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Get back to that. I think one of the questions I want to ask her related to, but it wasn't really directly in line with our conversation, was in the articles they talked about layoffs in the United States and other countries, that there was more sales and marketing talent coming to Europe, and I was just kind of curious if that was the case. I would like to see that happen. That would be great. Well, listen, thank you. We had someone, Ypsilanti, a guy named Anthony from Ypsilanti, who came and showed up in the chat. Always welcome. Glad to see you. Welcome, new chat person. Please, if you can log in sometime and come in and ask some questions. We always appreciate your questions. Everybody, hold on one sec. Last thing. Next week, once again, I forgot the date. I always do the subject and the name without the date. So next week, we're going to be talking ROI and social media with Emmerich. We've had Emmerich on the show before, but I'm looking forward to catching up with him. Kind of some questions about Threads. See what's going on. What's happening between Threads and Twitter. So hopefully you'll be able to attend, or if not, watch it in replay. Thank you so much and have a great day. Bye-bye.